and this is your Life Unfiltered podcast. We have today Ketul, my co-host.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for listening in. We have an incredible guest today, Shivani Shah. We are really excited to hear her story. Shivani, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hey guys, hey Keithel, hey Deepam. Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be part of your podcast. Congrats on launching. That's amazing. I am Shivani Shah. I am, a content creator on Instagram at the handle DoseofShivs. And I share a lot of vegetarian and Jane-friendly recipes and Costco finds. And I'm also a full-time marketing professional working in fintech.
That is amazing. Thanks so much, Shivani, for joining us today. Uh, if you could just go back a little bit, just a few years, maybe a little bit more than a few years, and just walk us through where did you grow up, and what was your upbringing like? What kind of environment did you grow up in, etc. That'll be awesome. And then how that translates into what you're doing today, both professionally at your job as marketing manager, as well as in the social media space.
Yeah, sure. So I was actually born in India, in Gujarat. And I came here when I was about 5 years old. So I immigrated here with my parents. And I settled in Brooklyn, New York. So I was basically on the East Coast most of my life. I was in Brooklyn for many years. And then my parents decided to move to the suburbs. So I'm in New Jersey. But I've always been in the New York City, New Jersey area. And I also, went to college here, Rutgers, and I studied marketing. And I've been working in financial services in the marketing sector for such a long time now.
That is fantastic. And how did you get the idea of starting your food blog, right? Which you obviously started 3 or 4 years ago around.
Yeah,
And
it's 2019.
do you want to share a little bit more about that? Where did you get the idea of the food blog, and what do you post about? And obviously, we'll talk a lot more about in detail as we kind of go through this discussion.
Yeah, sure. So in 2019, I was working in fintech and I was sharing recipes with my colleagues. I was sharing some vegetarian recipes and swapping recipes with them. And they said to me, why don't you start a food blog? You are really creative, you have a marketing background, you take really good pictures and thoughtful captions. You should, because I would post on my personal social media pages. And they were like, why don't you make a public profile? And I was like, okay, maybe I'll consider it. And then I finally did it. I think the biggest advice I would give to anyone is just to start. If you want to do something, just start it. And then I am so glad it was March of 2019 when I started my public Instagram page, DoseofShivs. And from there, it just, organically took off. I made so many great connections through the blogging world, and just being able to share what I love and what I enjoy, I think is just amazing.
Awesome.
That is amazing. So it sounds like you started just about a year before the pandemic started, right? When it comes to your content creation strategy, as well as the amount of time you contributed to your blog, your photo blog on Instagram, have you seen a shift pre-pandemic versus post-pandemic?
Yeah, definitely. So I started my blog in 2019. So I was able to go to a lot more events. I got to meet so many bloggers in person. I remember, a bunch of us from New Jersey, New York had met up that year, and it was really great. It was such a great experience when you meet other content creators in person. But then the pandemic happened, and I think, it is a good thing in terms of when the pandemic did happen, because it really set the stage of, okay, taking a step back now, can't go to the grocery store as much, can't see people as much. How do I stay connected to my, not just my family and friends, but with my community, on my blog? And I think that really helped put a strategy in place of, okay, let me, connect with my audience in a different way. And I think, the pandemic just taught so many lessons.
That is
Great.
awesome.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. So do you have any advice for content creators today operating in the pandemic age?
Yeah, I think, definitely start and don't give up. Especially with Instagram, it changes, it's dynamic. And I think my biggest advice is to have a website. So I created my blog in 2019 of March, and then I later that year I published my website. I worked on it. I was able to create my own website. And I think that's like the biggest piece of advice I would give to any content creator is to have your own website, because if Instagram goes down tomorrow, at least you have your website, you have that. So that's my advice.
Let me just say for the first thing, if the Instagram goes down tomorrow, a lot of us gonna go through very serious crisis mode here, right? We're not gonna.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are switching to TikTok, so who knows.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe you're right. No, that was just a joke.
Yeah.
But you mentioned your website, right? I
Hmm.
was going through your website, and
Hmm.
let me just say, first of all, that it was one of the most aesthetically pleasing sites that I've ever come across. So I highly recommend everybody to check Shivani's websites out. And Shivani, for our listeners, can you
Hmm.
just quickly mention the web address of your website? Where can they
Yeah,
find you?
it's www.doseofshivs.com. So it's basically my Instagram handle.
Okay, that is perfect. And related to that, I had a question. So I noticed on your profile that you have a lot of recipes that are inspired by the stuff that you find at Costco. So just curious to know, like, why Costco specifically? Why not, let's say, Safeway or Whole Foods? Do you wanna kind of expand more on that? Like, what's your thought process behind it?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a huge Costco addict. So if anyone that personally knows me, they know I love to go to Costco. It is my happy place. I think just growing up in the suburbs, in New Jersey, I remember going with my parents to Costco to go grocery shopping and to get stuff for the house. I just think it's such a cool spot because I always find something. Not that I need anything, but I always find something at Costco, and I love sharing my Costco finds. I think when I share that on my stories or even on my like on my website stories or my IG page, I just it's just so organic. I think because when you do something or you share something that you love, it just comes across. And I think for me, Costco has been my happy place.
You also prepare a lot of recipes, which I notice, and obviously you mentioned those recipes on your blog as well as in the post. So can you walk us through the process of how you come up with those recipes? Do you find the ingredient first, or do you find the idea first, or how do you kind of figure it all out and just put
Yeah,
it
no,
on
that's a
the?
great question. I think for me, it just naturally comes because I love cooking. I love creating recipes, right? That's one of the things that I enjoy. And I think a lot of it has to do just with the influence of seeing my mom, my aunts, my grandmother all cooking in the kitchen and, making delicious meals. I think growing up, just knowing and being surrounded by that has been a strong influence for me. And also for another thing is, yeah, I always read the ingredients on every packaging. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I maybe I can use this to create this recipe. And I just, or if I'm at a restaurant and I, order something and I'm like, oh, maybe I could do this differently. I always get inspiration with food. I think it just comes naturally because I am a big foodie.
That is awesome. And it sounds like there's a lot of inspiration from the culture as well that you grew up in, especially
Yeah,
the.
especially the Indian, the Gujarati culture, especially
Mhm.
just seeing a lot of my aunts and my mom. My mom's an amazing cook. I am a little bit biased, but she really is. And my grandmother, I think, just she every time I would visit India, she would always make so much food and she just loved feeding people, and I think that's just that hospitality that you get from our culture. Not, we don't just like cooking, but we love hosting and entertaining and
Mhm.
having family and friends over. I think that just makes it so much special.
Yeah, that is absolutely amazing. So I actually have a question. With all the recipes that you've created over the years, what has been your favorite recipe? Or do you have one?
Oh wow, that's a that's a really good question. I Yes, I do have a few favorites. I do think like my chili paneer pinwheels have been a huge hit. I created that recipe as something, unique, like really combining like a fusion flavors, and I really think that has been one of my favorite recipes to make during the holidays. And I love making like seasonal recipes. So in the summer right now, I love chiku, and you can't find chiku here. So I get frozen chiku from the Indian store, and I made like a chiku milkshake using oat milk, because I don't like regular milk, so I use oat milk when I make things like that. And I think also, during Diwali, making sweets like naan khatai and all those things has just been so much fun. I love making it and then gifting it to my friends and family. I think it's just something so special when you create something like food and then you give it as a gift during the holidays. I think that's just so special.
Okay, no, that sounds awesome. I'm going to switch gears a little bit.
Hmm.
So I was looking at your LinkedIn profile, and it looks like over the years you've done quite a bit of volunteering activity. So I see you were a Junior Achievement of New York volunteer from 2010 to 2016, and also a mentor for Big Brothers and Big Sisters of New York City. Do you want
Hmm.
to talk a little bit about that? Like, how you got involved with that? What kept you inspired to keep on doing that? Any stories about your time at any of those organizations?
Yeah, sure. So when I was at American Express, I had the opportunity to mentor a high school student, and she was this young, shy girl, and she was basically so shy and so timid, and I was paired with her to mentor her. And me being so extroverted and social, I really took my time to understand her and, really mentor her to understand all her abilities, because I saw so much potential with her. So for the 4 years while I was there, in that program, I saw her blossoming from this young, shy girl to this beautiful, outgoing, very thought driven woman. And she, actually majored in communications in college. And I was so proud of her. And I was like, wow, this is so great. Who would have thought? And I think a lot of it has to do with mentorship. Mentorship is so important because I think, if you have that ability to help someone in any way, you should definitely do it, and I'm so glad that, at American Express, at my time there, I was able to do this mentorship program.
Yeah, thank you
Beautiful.
for that. Thank you for that. It's really inspiring stuff. Would you, if you had a chance to, would you go ahead and do that again? Or do you feel like you've had your time, that you had an incredible experience, but now you want to move on to bigger and better things?
Yeah, no, I would always mentor, and actually, in my roles in the corporate world, I've always led teams or have mentored junior level employees. I think mentorship is such a great thing. So for me, being in marketing, being creative, that's great. But if I can volunteer my time outside of my corporate job to help someone in any way, I definitely think it's it's great. It's such a great feeling to see that, to see that you can make a difference in someone's life in a positive way.
Right. I mean, I had a question related to that, Shivani. You bring up a really good point about mentorship, and I've been reading about this stuff and talking about this stuff with a lot of my friends as well as colleagues, which are a little bit senior than me. So the concept of mentorship. I was wondering if you have a mentor, and if you do, how's your relationship with that person, right? Do you like meet with them monthly? Do you have like a regular cadence, for example, then you meet them on, or is it more irregular? It just depends on when you have key events and that, then you want to take their advice and kind of go from there. And obviously, do you mentor anybody else? So do you want to talk a little bit more
Yeah,
about that, maybe?
sure. Yeah, that's a great question. So, I think one of the biggest things that I learned while I was at American Express was the power of networking. I had such great mentors at that company. And, while I was there, I would meet with them on a quarterly basis. Like, I would meet with my mentors at work on a quarterly basis. And that continued while I was there during my tenure there. But I think LinkedIn is so great. I keep in touch with them, see where they are, and that's one of the biggest things about working at a company like that, because your network really helps you when you are looking for new opportunities or when you want to connect with them and see what they're up to. I think it's just so great to have that type of network. In terms of mentorship, I think, for me personally, yes, I do have mentors. I do keep in touch with them, but it's more like when I need advice on something, professionally. So if
Hmm.
I am, for example, if I am looking for new opportunities and I see that they may have a connection at a company, then I may reach out to them and have them introduce me or help me, make that connection, and vice versa. I've had so many people in my network reach out to me for career opportunities or career advice, or just even, advice on, hey, like I went to Rutgers also, like, we're part of the Rutgers network. What's your advice on how do I, get into this field? And I think it's just so great. And I think LinkedIn is such a great tool for that.
That makes a lot of sense.
So let's delve into a little bit about your educational background and what you do professionally, right? Why marketing? Were you always interested in marketing? Like you knew from the get-go when you started college you want to do marketing? Or was it something you decided over time? So that's the first
Yeah.
half of the question. And the second
Yeah.
half of the question is, how do you enjoy marketing?
Yeah. So I actually, like most South Asian kids, my parents wanted me to go into science. And in high school, I volunteered at the hospital in the pharmacy department. So I volunteered at the hospital as in their pharmacy department. And I actually went to a pharmaceutical marketing a school that a school in Philly that specializes in sciences, and I studied pharmaceutical marketing for a year and a half, and I realized in that year and a half that, you know what, I don't want to do pharmaceutical marketing. I just want to do marketing. And I think for me it was just I loved the creative aspect of it. So, in that in as a freshman, I remember taking all these like marketing classes, like, and I was so intrigued by it. And I was like, oh, this is so interesting. I want to learn more. So then I transferred over to Rutgers and I studied marketing. And I think it's just because, the classes that I took in business school just were so interesting, like the advertising 101 class or the creative writing class. It's so great to be able to use my talents to be in marketing. I think, it's not just being a creative, but I feel like it's really an art and a science combined,
No, that
because you
makes
really have to know the data behind, like, the marketing strategies that you come up with and make thoughtful, creative marketing strategies out of it.
no, that makes perfect sense. And if I really elaborate on that, it sounds like over time you were able to connect those dots and do something very exciting with that. And what I mean by that is if you look backwards, right? So first you went to school for pharmaceutical marketing, you realized you didn't like it, so you pivoted to marketing.
Yes.
You got a career path in marketing, and then you connected the dots that content creation is a great avenue for yourself, right? You can combine a lot of your passions such as creating recipes, Costco, etc., and
Mhm.
create content. And what really helped you with the content creation is all of your experience in marketing, right? So
Hmm.
branding, marketing, personal branding, communication, all those type of elements of marketing, you're able to leverage all your experiences both on the professional side as well as your educational side and manifest that in the form of a food blog, which I know you're doing extremely well at. I do
Thank
want to
you.
plug. I do
Yes.
want to plug Shivani Shah's food blog handle. It's at DoseofShivs, the same as the website. So be sure to give her a like, subscribe, and follow. I'm not sure if Shivani, if you have a YouTube as well, but if you do, if you want to plug that as well.
Oh no, I don't have a YouTube channel, but I do. I have Instagram. I am on TikTok, not as active, but it's still DoseofShivs. Um, on social media and my website.
All right, we have a next step for you following this podcast. Get Shivani a Dose of Shivs YouTube channel.
Yeah, maybe I can hire my own team to help me shoot videos or something.
Yeah,
For
or
sure.
you know what you can do actually? A compilation of any reels you've made.
Oh yeah, that's so true. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, no, I think, you answered it so well. Like, you really having my educational background, my interest, my skill set has really, manifested into this content creation. And I think it's so good to have all that, right? So good to have that educational background and skill set of what you do and pivot and, find new opportunities.
Fantastic. So besides the YouTube channel, I have one more question now.
Yes.
What is next for Shivani? So do you want to start a franchise of some kind of
Mhm.
DoseofShivs franchise? Like it's a label and like 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 you can have restaurant chains called like DoseofShivs or like on the menu inspired by DoseofShivs or
Oh
something. Like
yeah.
what is
No,
next for you?
I'm not sure what's next for me, but I would love to see a cookbook out one day. That is one of my aspirations is to have my recipes out there, published. So that is definitely something I want to aspire to do. I do enjoy writing, so I think that has an element to it as well.
Okay.
And I on your profile, on your Instagram profile, I noticed that you are a taste maker at Tastemade.
Yes.
Um, I was just a little bit curious about like what really that is. Do you want to expand and just let our listeners know what that is about and how you contribute to it?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I got an opportunity to be a tastemaker at Tastemade. So Tastemade is just a platform for foodies, and it's a great way to teach a class on one of my recipes or anything I've done. I have actually one of the classes that I taught was a chai, like a cha class, like Indian masala tea class, and it was so popular. I had so many people that signed up. I had to host it multiple times because there are so many non-Indians that are so interested in learning the art of making tea the Indian way. And I think that's just amazing. So yes, I am a tastemaker on Tastemade. Definitely, you can find me on there as well. And I do host, cooking classes and other events on there.
Right.
Mhm.
Is that a subscription-based service, or do you sign up for the events that you want to learn more about? How does that work?
So Tastemade is a platform. There is a subscription based service, or you can just sign up for events. I do events, so when I am able to do events, usually once a month, I have events on Tastemade, and what you can do is if you subscribe to my channel on Tastemade, you'll know you'll be notified of events when I do host them.
Got it. Got it. Okay. I would love to check it out sometime. Obviously, I am trying to get better at cooking and especially Indian cooking. So if you have anything special, I'll definitely check out your next one.
Yeah, sounds good.
Is there anything outside of a cookbook and outside of continuing to create content for your blog that you're interested in the future?
Yeah, I think I definitely want to continue and see where Dose of Shivs takes me. It's been a journey. It's been quite the journey. So I am so hopeful and optimistic about where it's going to go and who else, I'll be interacting with. So, for example, I connected with Gaethel on Instagram years ago, and now you have a podcast, and I'm here, and I get to meet Deepa. You never know, right? Like you never know who you meet and how you cross paths. So I think it's so amazing.
Yeah, I actually have an interesting take on that too, because similar to your story of how marketing got you into the blogging world with your content creation, I feel like it's a very similar concept, except with this podcast for me, because
Mhm.
I did like I was basically posting a lot of like menswear content back in the day, back a
Mhm.
couple years ago, and then
Yes, I remember you
eh,
modeling for menswear.
yeah, I did that
Wait,
about.
wait a second. Wait a second. We want to hear that story. I don't think I know what it is. What
It
are you
was a
talking
while
about?
ago. It was a while ago. It was like
Okay.
we're talking like 2018 and stuff like that, right? So it's like
Okay.
a
Well,
hint.
yeah, no,
Interesting.
2019. It
What were
was
you
definitely
modeling, man?
yeah.
No,
What were
it's
you
just
modeling?
what do you mean? What was it?
Menswear.
Yeah, like just like suits and stuff, like suits and
Oh, okay.
streetwear and that kind of stuff, right? So, but
That is pretty awesome.
basically, I connected with a lot of people back when I was basically acting as a content creator. And Shivani was one of those people that I connected with. And it's interesting because a lot of the people that the connections I made when everyone was trying to grow their platforms, I'm now able to bring a lot of them on as podcast guests. So it's kind of interesting how that's worked out. It's like all the people that I connected with doing one thing now I'm transferring them over a year later to this newest venture that we're doing.
Yeah, no,
That
that's
is
so great.
amazing.
That's amazing. It's like a full circle coming together.
Yeah, exactly.
By the way, where can people find your menswear stuff, Keto? Is
Well,
it still live?
I've shifted. Well, it's my creative handle, right? So it's at Kofari too, the same
Okay.
handle that I'm plugging against the Your Life Unfiltered podcast on. But I mean, the platform still exists. I'm not putting menswear content out anymore, and now it's more about just random snippets of my life and activities that I'm doing. That's what I've really been posting about recently.
It's totally fine. Totally fine. Actually, I did have a question for Shivani. I know we spoke a lot about marketing and branding and kind of how you um, brought all of those things together in terms of your obviously professional life as well as the blog stuff that you're working on. Um, if you were not into marketing, if you're not into cooking, what would you be doing instead of that? Like looking back now.
Yeah, I think, if I wasn't into marketing, I would have gone to culinary school and been a professional chef. I think that would have just been my passion. But it would definitely be something of service, right? It would be, cooking for a cause or something like that. And during the pandemic, one of the things that I did was have a lot of cooking classes for charities. So a lot of people were home. There were so many great charities to give back to. And I remember hosting like cooking classes and just donating to those charities. And I think that's just amazing, right? To give back. And I think that's my biggest thing that I do on my blog is to give back to my audience and my community. When I started my journey, I remember doing a lot of giveaways, and I think it was a way for me to give back to all my fellow supporters, so many loyal supporters of mine, and I always want to do something. So when content creators do giveaways, I think it's a great way to give back to their followers.
That makes a lot of sense.
All right. Do you want to move into the rapid fire round? Does that
Yes.
sound good? All
Yes.
right. So let me tell you a little bit about the rapid fire round.
Yes.
So in this section, we're going to ask you a series of questions just to understand you better and the way you think and your likes and dislikes. Are you ready to get started?
Yeah. And is it just one word or is it a sentence?
It's basically what you like better. So I'll just kick it off and I think you'll get the gist of it.
Okay. Got it.
So tea or coffee?
Tea.
Mountains or beaches?
Beaches.
Are you a morning person or a night owl?
Night owl.
Got it. So don't bother Shivani in the early mornings. Got it.
No.
What's your favorite comfort food?
Pizza.
Oh, just like me. Okay. Absolutely love pizza. And you live in the right part of the country for pizza, right? So
Yes.
New Jersey and New York City. So
yeah, you can't beat a Brooklyn slice.
exactly.
You can't beat a New York slice or a Brooklyn slice. So
what is your favorite virtue in others?
kindness.
Okay. What about your biggest pet peeve?
Just, judgmental, ignorant folks, I think is my biggest pet peeve.
Your biggest accomplishment in the last 1 year?
Just growing my blog and, being able to have the partnerships that I have, I think has been tremendous.
All right. Fantastic. All right. Final question.
Yeah.
What is next for you as we look out the next 1 year? So we talked about longer term, but if we look at the immediate future, the next 1 year, like, are there any specific action items that you're focused on?
Yeah, I think I definitely want to explore and travel more now that, travel is open or opening up. It's not as restricted. I definitely would love to, go to different cities and kind of just be like do like a food show, kind of like explore new like restaurants and talk about like the restaurants there or the places and all those things. I think it's so cool to be able to explore and then share that experience.
All right, fantastic. Well, that does conclude the rapid fire round. Thank you for playing.
Thank you.
So, Shivani, we've learned a lot about you in terms of some of your side hustles, such as the DoseofShivs blog, the cookbook that you want to do in the future. Could you tell us a little bit about, what you do for work in terms of the industry you're in and what you like about it?
Yeah, sure. So I've always been in financial services and marketing, and I love being in, fintech, which is financial technology, which is really cool, right? You get to learn about different payment options, different types of ways to serve your customers that are not traditional banking. I think it's pretty awesome to be able to serve others that may not have the means to do traditional banking or use payments in the way we traditionally use. In terms of my current role, I am in brand marketing. So one of the things that I work on is how do I elevate the brand? How do I, enhance the brand and the audience? Like who is our customer? And I think that has really tied to my blog in a way, because it's really understanding your audience, right? It's understanding your customer, your audience. So I think both professionally and, as a content creator, I'm able to connect the dots in that way.
Great. Thank you so much for that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think we are almost towards the end of our discussion, Shivani. Before we wrap up, do you have any recommendations for our listeners? And a recommendation could be
Mm-hmm.
a movie, a book, or a TV series. Could be any of those, or a combination as well.
Yeah, I think some of the recommendations that I have are just documentaries, like, different types of books, nonfiction. I love reading about, different people. And one of the shows that I was like recently watching, I want to say it was on Showtime, or it could have been on Apple TV. I'm not even sure anymore, but it was about first ladies. And I thought that was so interesting because I'm always interested in learning about other people and the history, um that they've served. And it was about our the first ladies, especially Michelle Obama. I like loved her book, and I like she's so inspiring. And I think this documentary that I was watching really showcased her life and her journey before she was first lady. So I think that's a really cool documentary to watch.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I believe that is it for the podcast recording. It
Mm-hmm.
was an absolute pleasure to have you on, Shivani. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you enjoyed the experience. Is this your first podcast, or have you been on podcasts
No,
before?
this is my second one. Yeah,
Okay,
the first one was another podcast I did in 2020, but this is my second one.
there you go. So, like one more time, you'll be a seasoned veteran at this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
So,
Sounds great.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
yeah. So, thank you all for listening in. Be sure to give at Your Life Unfiltered a follow on Instagram. We would absolutely love it if you could share this episode to your stories. As a relatively new podcast, we encourage everyone to support us in any way they can. We hope to add value to all of our listeners. Thank you and have a great rest of your day. Take
Thank you,
care.
everyone.
Thank you.